All right, what is going on? I am going to record another small study session. This one is going to be button versus big blind, single raise pots. This is the second most important configuration in 6 max no limit hold'em. So very important to play this spot well. This format, this drill that I've created is going through the entire hand. I think I get a little bit less out of this, but I'm about to play a session, so this kind of warms me up to play a little bit if I feel like it. Honestly, I'm a bit tired right now, but if I feel sharp after this study session, I will probably play a little bit, and I'll record that as well and review some hands. But for now, I'm just gonna run some drills, maybe like 10, 15 hands, playing through the entire spot, and going over some of the more interesting stuff that we run into. So 4-3 deuce, two-tone. Actions on us, we have the option to donk, B33, or check. I typically play a range check here just because I don't study donking lines too often, but I know that this is going to be like a frequency mistake if I check. The other option is to play simplified strategies, which eliminate the option to donk for out of position in this configuration. But just so that we have all options on the table, I understand that donking is going to be a part of the strategy on this board. A hand like this benefits from donking. This is like the primary hand that is like enjoying what happens when you donk. It's like equity denial, not getting bluffed. I mean, this hand doesn't really need to worry about that because it's strong enough to check call, but there are a number of hands that would rather donk and then check call. So anyway, on a 93, I'm gonna go ahead and donk. When we get the Queen of Clubs turn, my thoughts are that out of position can do a couple things. Like we can continue denying equity from ace high with this small size, and we can also start to size up with some of the stronger hands in our range. I think on this board texture here, being like very connected, low, and then also two-tone, it kind of I don't know the exact sizes that are played in this spot, but it makes me shy away from using sizes that are like extremely large, because there are a lot of rivers that will shift the what the nuts are in equities. After my opponent calls the flop, they're very they're supposed to be calling with some overpairs, but they do a lot of raising as well. They're supposed to be doing quite a bit of raising in theory. So their range is somewhat capped by them taking the passive action on the flop. I think this hand would prefer to go into a small size. On a 99, I don't. I think this hand definitely would prefer to go in a small size. You deny equity from like ace high type hands, especially like ace X of hearts or like offsuit ace X that has a spade, and you can get called by worse flush draws as well and some 5x. So on a 99, I definitely will continue betting this. I wonder if that's a frequency mistake, or, and this is a hand that is a pure check, or if they're, maybe it's like an inaccurate size that I used. And then on the river, this is an interesting one. So we'll have to look at this a little bit more in depth after I make my decision here. But my intuition or my gut is telling me to just check immediately and then showdown versus like ace king. But ace king or like ace 10, like some indifferent ace 10, I think, right? Versus block, like they have to call some ace highs. But is it worth bluffing? I don't think so. I'm gonna check. This might be, I might have completely butchered this hand. We also are in a line with this hand that is very, very infrequent. So, and then facing normal size from in position. I don't think this hand would want to raise for the all-in size or like do any large raising at all, actually. The weakest hand they reopen the action with on the river is like Queen X, hand like King Queen. I think even like the Queen 10, like I think just in general Queen X, right after like block. This hand makes sense to fold for me, I think. Yeah, blocking some bluff. So looks like they had Queen 3 of diamonds. Interesting what the turn decision was. Wow. Okay, so like I said, full disclosure, I do not play donks from out of position in this configuration. Do I think there is merit in studying them? Absolutely, because who knows, you might be facing an opponent who loves to donk, and it's good to know what the theoretical strategy looks like. So let's get an idea of what the barrel frequency is for the out of position player after donking the flop. So yeah, I guess my intuition was, correct in that, we're playing this smaller size. I think the higher this card, right, like the less you want to play the smaller size. But yeah, it seems like the threshold might be somewhere that I was not really anticipating. So like 3x is already mixing a ton of check, and then you have deuce x, and this is like no longer wanting to bet at all. So you're a little bit more careful with these hands, and yeah, overall just not betting a ton is another thing. So I may have overestimated how often we bet, which is likely a leak of mine when I think about it. But also, this is a node that I don't often really myself into or study. So it's interesting. I wonder what the large size is built around. It's like straights, so you're bluffing a 5, right? And then draws as well, and sets. So maybe we go straight sets, some 2-pair. I think even 2-pair, right, is like doing a lot of checking, and even some small betting, like some of this lower 2-pair. So yeah, that was it's a bit of a blunder on the turn. Like definitely, maybe not a blunder in terms of EV, but an inaccuracy, and I think really stems from how often we get to bet as out of position. Like my perception of how often we get to bet as out of position in this turn spot. So that was an interesting one. Okay, let's move on. So we get King Queen 6, 2-tone. This is going to be a range check. And then facing an overbet, this hand is always folding. Without a spade, I think with the spade, it's, I don't know if it's a pure call even with the spade. Maybe I'm, yeah. Maybe I messed up a little bit here with my frequencies, but I'm always folding this hand, facing overbet, and then we can go ahead and take a look at what the threshold is for calling. So, yeah, Queen X with no backdoor is indifferent. So we're looking at second pair that's indifferent. Third pair type hands are always folding. Even with a spade, always folding, facing an overbet. Can we look at the EVs? I don't know if it will let us. I guess not, but we can look at the EV of call for eights with a spade, and it is slightly losing. Sevens no spade is losing quite a bit. So. So actually, let me check if. Yeah, Queen X being indifferent. This is something that I don't anticipate gets folded much in game. Like a hand like Queen 9, for instance, Queen 9 of clubs, Queen 9 of diamonds, might call a lot in game. That's just what my gut is telling me. Is that people do not like to fold very often, especially pairs. So you have a hand like Queen 9 of clubs. You're not even really concerned with blocking bluffs, blocking hands like 10-9, blocking hands like Jack 9, blocking hands like just like some lower equity hands, right? You're like just happy to call because you have second pair. So, I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are on, the like what the threshold is that you see people folding, facing an overbet. Oh, let me close this. Okay, Jack 6-6. I'm gonna go ahead and check. What's interesting about these boards is like, I'm sure if you were to like do a bit of locking on your opponent's response to a donk, that you would be able to donk these types of boards quite often. I say that as if like I don't already know, but like I have definitely done some. Like when I had the GTOW AI, I did some node locking and found that like you can definitely play. There are some interesting strategies viable if you anticipate your opponent responding to a donk bet inappropriately. So, but here I'm going to range check. And we face this B33 size, and the question is whether or not we want to raise or call. And I think a rule that I follow so that I am not like way out of whack with my frequencies is I will check raise flush draws around 50% of the time, and this flush draw seems like it would benefit from check raising quite a bit actually, and not all flush draws are created equal. Some have better, like harder removal than others, and some have some are better at unblocking worse flush draws that can call. Like this combo in particular is pretty nice to raise because he gets called by worse flushes, worse flush draws. On a 41, I will call just because that is sort of like the rule I tend to follow, but I might be wrong and this hand class might be raised more. Okay, so it looked like that was about spot on with the frequency. 9 of clubs, I'm going to check, but this is another spot where donking strategies become kind of interesting. And even in theory, like you saw, even in theory on the flop, like there's some, you could call it solver noise or whatever, but there's some like the the EV of donking is very close for a lot of hands. So like if you were to tweak your opponent's response to a donk, it would become a part of the out of position strategy on the flop for sure. On the turn as well, what happens is like, well, actually, it would not happen on this board because in position needs to mix a lot of check on this type of board texture, Jack 6-6 two-tone. So maybe I save those thoughts for a different paired board spot. Anyway, we're gonna check here. All that to say, we're gonna check here. Let's check, and Jack 6-6, 9-9. So we would definitely be bluffing some underpairs here, but that's not all that we can bluff. I think that having a king is just slightly having a king is nice, and we are willing to show this down. I don't know what the threshold is for bluffing, so we'll take a look at that after this hand is through. Goes check, and we lose to ace-10. Let's go ahead and look at the river strategy. All right. So top pair is using a block size. It looks like there's like some overbet strategy that is built around quads and full houses, but I would kind of stay away from that and just use like normal sizes. It's a bit easier to use or like as a strategy without being, I see a lot of these spots where people will take like a humongous size, right? And it's like a majority of the time you're going to be using normal sizes. So it's like, I tend to like overfold versus them. Is that good or bad? I don't know. It really depends on the opponent. Anyway, what were we interested in is the bluffing frequency. So it looks like I don't really understand this. Yeah, this is odd to me. I guess we're happy to bluff our opponent off of a chop with the king of spades. Like my feeling about this is that when you have the king of spades, and this is not something I would think about in game, let me just be clear, but when you have the king of spades, you unblock a lot of the hands that check back. And it's the same thing when you have the king of diamonds or king of clubs. So it seems like a lot of these king high hands that your opponent would have containing the king of spades or the king of diamonds or clubs would not end up in this line. So it's nicer to bluff with these cards, to bluff your opponent off a chop, or maybe bluff, basically bluff your opponent off of a chop is what I would anticipate. I just don't know why king queen exclusively. I don't know. Is it worth looking into the minutia? Probably not. Anyway, no made hands. Let's see, what are we bluffing? Like the lower pairs, of course. And then it looks like queen high is like the main candidate to bluff with. So yeah, king high just slightly too strong, and then you could just use even a block size. Like I don't know what the exact response would be versus block, but like we could look later. I wonder if king X is indifferent. I don't know. In game, I think this is like so underfolded that it's like laughable, at least versus like the global regs. So yeah, let's move on to the next hand. 10-8-4 rainbow, range check. Goes check, check, and then we get the king of diamonds. On this card, when I bet, when I put money into the pot, I'm saying that I have a very strong hand. Like, there are no hands that I'd want to protect or bet for a small size for protection. I'm saying that I have a hand that is like willing to put some money in on a dynamic board where lots of rivers will change the equity of the board. So like I would use primarily like this normal size, B75, B125. These would be like my primary sizes. I don't think I would ever play like B33. This could be wrong, and like that, this very well could be part of the strategy. Queen 10, I am happy to. Queen 10. Okay, let's. You know what? I'm gonna because there's no time bank here. I'm gonna think a little bit more about the removal properties of my hand. The check back region here is a lot of ace-x. Ace-king is even betting for like a small size, even though generally the strategy is like quite polar on this board. The queen does not have, the queen is blocking some of like the ace-queen, king-queen region. Yeah, it's basically just ace-high, right? Like that's what it's built around. And then like lower pairs. I don't even think they have much king, like this blocks like some of their king X. Maybe this hand is pretty good to bet. I'm gonna check, but I think that this hand would do a bit of betting. Okay, it was close. Like this frequency was very close. And then my hand seems like a really straightforward bet here. Like I don't think I would ever check my hand. I think it's probably worth B75. This range is primarily like ace high or weaker pairs. It's just a pure B75. All right, that this turn spot is interesting. So it goes after in the delay line, right? So it goes check, check, and then my opponent's strategy with the 4 is also interesting to me. So it looks like they're just like taking the 4 and bluffing with it. Like when you bet it for, like when you overbet ace 4 here, you are bluffing. So that's interesting to me. Okay, and then on the turn, yeah, it looks like I was wrong, right? I was yapping about there not being any block size, but it looks like that is a part of the strategy. Not that large a part of the strategy, but that being said, betting in general is pretty low frequency, and this tends to be the case in delay lines, by the way. So like people you see probing 50% of the time, right? Like they're probing way too often, especially if you are checking back more than you should. So like I generally, yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about like exploitative strategy, but I generally see regs probing turn too often. Like I would say like the entire pool, right, is probing the turn slightly too often because it's just such a frequent check spot. Like a lot of these turns are just like checked so high frequency that like the overall frequency I think would probably be closer to like 30-35%, right, probe. Anyway, what are we using this small size for? It looks like the small size is really built for 10x. So when you eliminate this size, I'm not sure exactly how often you'd want to bet queen 10. I think queen 10 is okay, but to me it seems like, I don't know, it might be a nice hand to check. Anyway, 8-4 deuce. We're gonna check, and okay. Well, I don't want to look at the strategy. We're gonna check, and my opponent should be playing like a b75 or b75 or check strategy, roughly. On the king, I think the out of position player is going to be quite polar here. This hand is pretty much junk. It wouldn't always go into it wouldn't always go into the check, but I think that it'd be very, very rare for this to go into a polar size, because there's no way for it to outdraw the calling range. Like there's like when it legitimately has zero equity when it gets called. Which is not like, should be the case sometimes when your range is like invulnerable. Like the strong hands in your range are invulnerable. You need some zero equity bluffs, but most hands are vulnerable on this board. So like the amount that you would be betting zero equity type hands, the amount that you would be over betting zero equity type hands is like extremely low, if not like zero. Right. So this hand on a 2, I'm going to check. Do I think it would go into the air, like into like the air region? Maybe sometimes, like if you were to play like some block, like we saw on the passport, like they were playing some block, maybe you would do that, right? Maybe you'd put that into a smaller size, just put some garbage. But this hand also might be happy to show down. Like Queen 10 is not the strongest hand, but is it has a certain amount of equity at showdown. And then versus this size, always folding, 98%. I'm sure there's some fucking noise or whatever. And we'll go ahead and look at the threshold for, look at the turn strategy after check check. So this looks like the turn strategy, right? Am I tripping? I don't know. Okay, this is the flop strategy. Check, check, right? You even see like there's some donking noise, like there's some solver noise that suggests that we can donk. I think that's interesting as well. But it goes check, check. And they're supposed to bet air hands like this, by the way, as a position. This is an interesting point that maybe I will. Wow, 27 minutes kind of flew by. I can really yap when I'm studying, but this is an interesting point that I think is worth talking about. Is in position on these boards, like yes, you have the overcards that need to bluff, but you also need like the garbage. Like you need ace. You need like the ace. I guess ace 3 and ace 5 are gut shots, but like you need like the queen 3 suited bluff, like airball. You need like the 10-6, practically an airball, like really low equity barrels on the flop as in position. Otherwise, you should be way, way over folding as out of position. And let that be like that's really worth thinking about, because like you go ahead and node lock a strategy, right? Like if you wanted to take the spot, 8-4 deuce, two-tone, you node lock this exact configuration, button versus big blind, and you just eliminate the airball bluffs from imposition's range. Like you don't even need to eliminate all of them. You just eliminate like queen 3 suited, king 3 suited, 10-6 suited, stuff like this. I'm not going to go further into like listing them, right? But like you eliminate these hands from their range, and like you can go look at what the out of position response should be versus bet then, and it's like drastically overfolding and raising a ton, right? Because all they're like raising rate, like really fast playing a lot of your value. I'm sure they've done this on some GTOW videos. I don't have access to them anymore, but I remember like Don Corleone or whatever his name was discussing this, and it's just like it is honestly such a valuable thing to notice, or like to pay attention to, because like when you do call your opponent, like unless you're playing a perfect theoretical strategy, which is very, very unlikely. Your opponent is owning the shit out of you, and they're literally like they're peddling equity versus you, which is pretty much like peddling the nuts. Like people are nitty when they're betting, and they need to bet more air. Okay, that'll be my last talking point. Like for this video, I guess. What else did I want to do? I guess I wanted to see the turn strategy and then like the threshold. So yeah, extremely polar turn strategy, which is sort of what we anticipated. With a little bit of this B33 size. If we look at the B33 size, this is what like the air hands are going into. Like you'd prefer to have a spade, right? So that you can bluff spade rivers, like, but you definitely are gonna like queen three. We were just talking about this. Queen three of diamonds is bluffing like some small percentage of the time. This is important stuff to like pay attention to, because if your opponent's taking this line versus you, like you need to think, are they doing this? Unlikely. So with that, maybe just one more hand and then we'll call it a video. 9-7-4. We have 7-8-7. I'm sure this hand would actually, like, given our opponent's strategy is going to be primarily like large bets, over bets, and then large bets or check. This hand, I'm sure, if we were to like tweak the strategy, would want to donk. And then facing an over bet, we were going to call. I don't think, in theory, maybe we raise like 4 or 5% of the time we check raise versus this size, but I very, very rarely play check raise versus this, which is, sort of the case in theory. It wouldn't surprise me if this was like some check raise candidate versus this size, just because it has the ability to outdraw over pairs and backdoor into some strong hands. And if you drill a 7, it's never bringing in a flush. It's always like a clean out as well. So I'm just dead wrong about that, but don't mind me. Take a look at the response on the flop later, but here wouldn't be surprised if there was some donking, since we really don't check raise much versus the over bet. But I'm gonna go ahead and check. Okay, so there's quite a bit of donking, and then we face this geometric size. So we're going direction all in if we call. Wow, this is like a kind of a grim spot, right? Like you face this line in game. If you face this line in game, I think it's safe to assume that you should fold, just based on how a lot of people are constructing their range. But here, let's see. Okay, 33 minutes. We got 2 minutes here. Here with the 8, this is like blocking some amount of bluffs. I guess actually no, blocking some amount of bluffs, because like they're primarily betting. Is the overpair region able to just go bet on this board? I don't know. I think it is primarily overpairs. We're gonna have to check this line. I'm gonna fold. Okay, and folding is just as a legitimate blunder, but not to be results oriented. The right decision versus 9-7. Just saying. Let's go ahead and look at the strategy here. So check, and we face an overbet. Okay, so check raising much more than like, right, I think I said 4 or 5% of the time. It looks like we can be a bit more aggressive than that on this board texture. And what's interesting is that like I think that especially regs, they tend to play very passively versus overbets, but I mean, we can see right here that we're pretty happy to check raise and get pretty aggressive versus versus that size even on this type of board. So wow, okay, so I guess eight, 7, right? With the 7 of spades, this is the wrong assumption. The 7 of spades, I mean, I guess maybe they're overbetting the 7 of spades. So you're blocking. I don't know. I really don't know what it is. I'll have to look at this a little bit more in depth after I wrap up the video. But like 8-7 no spade is like totally indifferent between all three. But 8-7 with the 8 of spades, this is doing some check raising. So this is like interesting to me. This is sort of like the type of hand class I thought would be raising. So that is interesting. We'll go ahead and look at the turn. A lot of donking on the turn. Did anticipate that. Do I think it's as effective as it is? I guess it is pretty effective in game, but you know, that's something I could talk about later. And then we face overbet. And let me just try and get an idea of what range construction looks like for the button. Yeah, so after overbetting, it's overpairs still very much intact. 7x of spades, and then like 2 pair. Like, so overpairs and, you know, plus, right? Yeah. Some very strong hands there. And doing a lot of check raising all in as out of position. This is a hard strategy to play. This is a really hard strategy to play. Like, it's kind of like, what are the hands that you're just saying, like, all right, take the rest of my money? I guess it's like these really big combo draws, and some 2 pair. Do you ever jam some top pair? Yeah, these are like bluffs though. Like, these are pretty much bluffs. Like, they just have so much equity. Like, they don't have like they're never winning. If the hand was to end right now, they're like never winning, right? If they like go all in and get called, right? So it's like they're basically just banking on like having enough equity when called to drill the river or yield some folds. So really interesting. So it looks like the threshold for check jamming is 2 pair, and then top pair is completely indifferent. I guess when you have the 8, wow, what doesn't make sense is like, actually no, because I guess if they're barreling 7x of spades, you're blocking the hands that beat you here. You're blocking a lot of hands that are beating you. So that's the nice part. So it was really important to have the 7 of spades. It's interesting how exact combos work. That was a fun one. And I think that is probably, end on a blunder is what it is. It's the story of my my poker career. But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. Thank you for tuning in. I understand it's likely pretty boring again if you're not interested in studying or discussing these spots at all. Tonight I'll probably upload a little play and explain of like some 100 and now, either on global or ACR. I've been thinking about playing on there too. But anyway, leave your thoughts in the comment section. Be sure to like the video, and thanks for watching.